First, Carol, I'm going to look at your new grip. It looks really good. I really like the left hand. I can see the label on the back of your left hand, which means you have it in a nice, what we call a good strong position. You've got your right hand in a good position as well. This crease is kind of going towards your back shoulder, and it's somewhat parallel to the crease of your left hand. That's what you want. So that looks real good.
Now, Carol, let's look at your full swing. Let's look at that again in slow motion. You have a very good beginning shape to a golf swing. Now we want to start fine-tuning certain components to make the swing even better. These components are fundamentals, and fundamentals are not some abstract concept. They have a certain look. If the look isn't there, then the fundamental isn't there. The process to learn the fundamental is to shape our swing so the look of the fundamental is in our swing. We need to work on these fundamentals in a certain sequence and only work on a few at a time. As you work on each fundamental, you will achieve certain benchmarks during the process. Once the stage 1 benchmarks have been achieved, we may shift the work to a different fundamental in order to achieve that fundamental's next benchmark. Let's look at the swings of a few pros and observe the common look of some of these swing components. This is Grant Waite, who was one of the best ball strikers in the 90s and now is one of the best tour instructors, along with teaching partner Joe Mayo. Joe is a longtime friend and lives here in Las Vegas. First, Carol, let's look at your setup. I really like a lot of the components of your setup. I'm going to compare you to Grant Waite, and you'll notice that he has very extended arms, and you as well. Look at this left arm, very nice extension there. The width of your stance looks good. Everything there looks really good. The posture looks good. The only other small area in the setup is the weight distribution. I want you to have just a little bit more weight on your left side than your right side. Just looking at where your waist is positioned inside the box, it looks like you have a little bit more toward the back foot than the front foot. And Grant has a little bit more on his left foot than his front foot. And the reason for this is at the moment of impact, the average pro will have 85 to 90% of their weight on this left leg right here. If you look at Grant at impact, you can see how he's really driven his body on top of his left foot. His belt buckle is right on top of his left foot. That's where we need to try to get to at impact. One of the things I would want you to work on is just I don't want you to move your head so much, but just kind of bump your hip this way just a little bit, and so that you just feel like you have a little bit more weight on your left foot than you do your right foot. Now, the only other thing I want you to work on right now is the beginning takeaway. I'm going to put a little red box around Grant's head and around your head, and I'm going to start Grant's backswing. And notice how he keeps his head in that box. He doesn't move it to the right or left, and he doesn't drop it down. So he moves his body in such a way that allows that to occur. And you have a tendency, when you go back, to drop down and right. So when you get to the 3 position, you have moved your upper body to the right sides, and that's going to make it more difficult to get back to the left on the downswing. Let's look at a couple other pros and see how they move and keep their head still. This is Rory McIlroy. You can see how he keeps that head in that box as he takes it back. This is video I took of Tiger Woods at last year's U.S. Open. Let's look at how he takes that club back. So his initial taking it back, he keeps that head right inside that box. He doesn't drop down. He has a very stable axis, just rotates around a stable axis, keeps his golf circle very still. This here is MB Park, who lives here in Las Vegas and plays on the LPGA Tour. And she keeps that head right in that box as she takes it back. This is Paula Creamer. You see how she keeps in that. When she gets to the 3 position, she's still in, her head is still in that box. It has not moved to the right. Now we've identified something that we want to do. Now let's talk about how to do it. I've drawn a red line off your left foot straight up. Grant is able to keep his head centered and stable and stationary because of the way he moves around his left side. Let's look at Grant take this club back. As he goes back, he's actually dropping down with this left shoulder down on top of this left foot. He keeps his left shoulder on top of that foot, so it's, you could almost say, shoulder down. So he's moving his shoulder in a way. He's moving his shoulder this way, and you have a tendency to want to move your shoulder that way. And so we're going to kind of change how you feel your upper body move in the backswing. It's on the red line now, but it's now moved away from that red line. Now, if you look at the lower body, your knee is still right on that red line, and so is Grant. So your lower body is doing a pretty good job of trying to stay stable and stay stationary with where you started. But it's your upper body that's kind of leaning to the right. So the real big difference is in how each of you look in this upper body. If I were to draw an arrow from his right knee right up to the leg, he's kind of leaning towards his target. And if I draw, and you're over to the other side, you're kind of leaning away from the target. And the key is in this shoulder. He keeps his shoulder right on top of that foot, and your shoulder has drifted back. So your shoulder's kind of going this way, and I want it to kind of go down in that backswing. So we don't want to try to keep our shoulders level. You actually want to feel this left shoulder get lower, go down to the ball a little bit. If you look at Grant's left leg, he really flexes this left knee. He's kind of loading it up. It's almost like if he had a drink can under his left foot, he's squashing that can in his backswing. So he's kind of squeezing the ground with his left leg. It's almost like he's getting ready to push off the ground for power. And so I want you to feel yourself flex this left leg more so that you can kind of squeeze the ground with your left leg. That'll be the key. So let's watch Grant go from this 3 position to impact. And as he starts his downswing, he's driving even more towards the target. The 5 position is when the left arm is parallel to the ground. You can see how he's moved his belt buckle almost up to the blue line. So he's moving his body on top of that left foot. And he continues to drive. In fact, now his belt buckle is right on the blue line. As he continues forward, his waist, he's actually has turned, and his belt buckle is actually facing in front of the ball. So he's really rotated his hips, and he's getting his weight on that left side. And then at impact, he's solidly on that left side. Because you're so much on the right side in the 3 position, and then as you start down, you're trying to get to the left, you're starting to move more to the left, but you can't quite get to as far left as you need to be because you started too far from the right. And so that's the reason we want to stay on the left and not move to the right, because if you move to the right, you're not going to get back to the left in time. Now the second thing I would like you to work on is your extended arms through impact. Now you have really good extended arms at the beginning. So your arms you have a straight arm here and a fairly straight arm here. Let's take Grant back to the beginning. Grant has a straight arm here and straight arm here. Now Grant, when he gets to impact, he basically returns to straight arms. He hits through the ball with straight arms. Look at that right arm. Look how straight that right arm is as he goes through impact. And when he gets to what we call the 9th position, where the right arm is parallel to the ground. Grant's right arm is very extended, but he also still has his left arm very extended. You start with very good extended arms, but as you approach the golf ball, your elbows start to separate a little bit. And so you've got a little bit of an angle here. You can see this right arm is bending. This left arm is starting to bend a little bit. As you go through, this right arm is still bent. Now when your hand gets almost level with your right shoulder, your arm is still bent. So you never really achieve this extended right arm position. Also notice when Grant's right hand is level with his right shoulder, he has crossed his wrist and his left hand is underneath the right hand, and your left hand is above the right hand. And in this position also, I can't really see your left elbow. You have let that left arm go behind your back instead of stand out in front of you. So one of the things that we need to work on a little bit is learning how to swing extended arms right there. We're going to swing our body through the ball, not just swing our hands through the ball. So Carol, there's two things I want you to work on. First is the movement from the starting position to the 3 position. This is Grant in the 3 position. To begin this process, I want you first to just pose in this position. Just do a static pose and not try to move there first, but just try to see if you can't position yourself in a pose that looks like Grant. And remember, what you have to alter the most is your upper body. Your lower body was pretty good at keeping the left knee right on top of the foot, but you sway to the right. So that's what's going to change the most. Then the second thing you're to work on is doing a static pose in this 8th position. So you're just going to kind of lean on the left side, stand on that left leg, eyes are still down, arms are extended, elbows close to each other. Try to see what that feels like, just to pose like that. Just try to stand in a pose that looks like Grant in this position. So in the beginning, you don't have to move like the pros, but first learn how to pose like the pros in these correct key positions. By doing these pose drills and repeating these positions, you'll become comfortable and familiar with these positions. Then it won't be as difficult to then move to these positions.